Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am joined by repeat offender, Zach Stevens. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jonathan. Super stoked to be back. I love the title too, Repeat Offender.
Yes, I should say welcome back to the show, right? So about almost exactly a year ago, you came on and told us about your new subscription. Well, I'll let you tell it, but a subscription service in the design space. And you suggested coming back on to kind of give people an update on how it's gone in the last 12 months. But first, could you remind folks, in case they didn't hear the first episode, who you are and what you do?
Sure. So it would have actually been 2 years ago from September 11th this week. So we're
Two
almost
years.
directly.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
sorry. 1 year. 1 year within 2 days. Like we're 2 days short of 1 year on the dot.
I was going to say, I know my math is bad. I didn't think it was that bad.
Well, it's definitely better than mine. I'm just the designer. Um, so as Jonathan mentioned, I am a designer by trade. I actually run a product marketing agency on a subscription basis, and design is a integral part of that called Conversion Factory. It's me and two other co-founders, one who is the marketing leg of things, so handling copywriting, customer research, positioning, lots of fun stuff that marketers get to do to make sure that people actually want the things that our clients are coming to us for. There's me who runs the design side of things. I make things look pretty and make sure that they are differentiated within the marketplace. And then our third leg is Nick, who is our Webflow developer who comes and makes all the things that I put together live and actionable and actually driving those conversions for our clients.
Cool.
Yeah. So last time I was on, we had just launched. We launched shortly after July 4th of 2023. I think that July 11th was our exact date. And within a month, we were doing 36K MRR.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are at 66. So
Wow.
almost double. Yeah.
Was it two people back then or three?
It was always three.
Okay.
It was Corey and I were, Nick was still leaving his full-time job at the very onset, but he was always a part of Conversion Factory.
Got it. Wow. Well, congratulations. That sounds great. So, do you think the growth was just word getting out, or did you do anything different to continue to attract people, or is it just the kind of thing that had to snowball over time?
So I think having one work to show was a big component of it, being able to demonstrate here's what we've done for X client, and things like that are really provocative and easy to share, easy for people to get more interest in. We still have Corey, who has a phenomenal newsletter that has 20,000 plus subscribers on it that we can also use as a really impactful channel. We've gone to quite a few events within our target audience's space. So all around software as a service, that's our main clientele, going to events to meet people. Actually, Corey's gone to two events, or we've gone to three events from a company called MicroConf. They're part of the, if you're familiar with them,
Yeah,
Startups
Rob
for the Rest of
Walling.
Us, Rob Walling, exactly. And both of those he's come back and we've landed a client from just him connecting with people at those events. So
Cool.
super profitable as far as just actually going and shaking hands and then meeting people.
Mhm.
And I think those have been the primary channels.
Cool. And then what does the sales process look like? Because you've got people might not realize, but you have like a SaaS esque sales page where you've got different tiers of service. And is it what happens next when people you meet someone, you press the flesh, they come back, they're like, you know what, we're interested. Is there like a protracted sales conversation, or is it more like they click a button and boom, let's go?
So we've only ever had one person. It was our first client that bought a subscription without meeting us. And he told us that the reason he did that was because we were very limited. I spoke about this in depth on the last podcast, but we only wanted to take on 5 for the very beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
onset of this because it was an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So he saw that and he was like, well, shoot, man, I don't want to be, come in at number 6 and find out I can't work with you guys. So he was the only one that did that. But then we ended up having a more formalized sales call with him after.
Mm-hmm.
So typically what will happen is people will schedule a call with us. They last about half an hour. And within that call, or within them booking that call, we send an automated video to them that gives an overview of here's how our workflow works. It's an overview of our dashboard that we have in Notion. Here's a breakdown of the different tiers. We changed that a little bit, and I'm sure we could probably talk about the changes in pricing that we made as well. But breaking down that at tier one, you get to work with one skill set at a time. Tier two, you get two skill sets at a time. So that could be a combination of design and marketing or design and webflow, working in tandem. And then tier three is you get the whole kit and caboodle. So all three of us working in tandem on projects, and you get the most out of Conversion Factory if you're having all three smokestacks firing up.
I like the metaphor. All right, cool. So what of those, what has been is there a clear winner? Is there one that's the most popular? Do people change up and down?
They definitely vary between the middle tier and the low tier. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we also price them to be that way. So, like the beginning tier, first, which we call the first floor of the factory,
Mm-hmm.
is $6,000 a month. You get one task at a time. The middle tier is $9,000 a month. You get two tasks at a time. And then the third tier, which is three tasks at a time, is 15,000. So we have had people on every single one of those. Uh, and if you'll note, like there's a disparity in the cost per request between the two of them. So it's $6,000 per skill set that you're working with on the first floor. It drops to 4,500 per skill set on the middle floor, and then goes back up to 5,000 per skill set on the third floor. So that
Mm.
middle one is that's your bullseye offer of, hey, it's the best deal. You get to work with two of us, and uh, most people will cycle between the middle tier and the first tier.
So people are going to wonder if they look at your website, which I suggest they do. Maybe you can follow along at home by going to conversionfactory.co. And the when you say two skill sets at a time, do they decide what the two are going to be during the lifetime of the engagement, or is it just two at a time, like any two, but only two?
Any two, but only two. It's one of the things that I was noticing with a lot of the subscription models. Um, One, a lot of them are just one person. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
competitive advantage in that there's actually a team of us, and that each one of us has a core skill set that we bring to the table. Because I can say, like, if I was just doing this by myself, yeah, you get two requests at a time, but can I actually work on two requests at a time for you? No, because I only have two hands and one brain. Um, Whereas with us, you can actually, like, I can work on one thing, like the next page in a website design, while my other co-founder Nick is building out the last page that I designed. So we can actually work real time in tandem, whereas other one person shops might only be able to do, like, they can physically only do one thing at a time.
Right. Yeah, they can't work in parallel. It sounds like already you've uncovered some nuances in the way that people want to work with you and the nature of the work in a model like this, which is very novel. So, what are some things that you would maybe warn people about, or just give a heads up to if someone was thinking of maybe starting something like this?
Mm. I would say this: it's still work. Like, I think that there's, it's getting, you have people who are like, oh, it's like, owning a gym where you have people sign up for subscriptions, and then it's amazing because you only have to work with them for January, and then they never show up for 6 months.
Hmm.
But if you're working with clients that are going to have you do impactful, high yield work that they are really proud of and that you're really proud of, you're going to still do stuff. It's almost like that. I get like the freelance from the beach and bring your laptop and while you're at
Hmm.
the waves, which has its own can of worms attached to it, but you're still going to be doing a lot of work, and a lot of really good work. I think that the difference is that you're going to be a lot happier with the less amount of headaches that you have trying to do things like scope enforcement, or trying to figure out like what a project is going to look like, where you can instead just do the work. And when things change, you don't have to have that really annoying conversation of like, oh, that wasn't in scope. Sorry, we're not going to be able to do that, even though it's highly beneficial for the project for it to pivot in that way. So I'd say
Hmm.
that's one big nuance that I hope everybody else understands, that is, you're still going to have to do things for people.
Yeah, it's not $40 a month, so people are going to really probably want to use it. Not going to just like let the machine sit there doing nothing.
Exactly.
What what happens, or does it happen, that people want to bury you in requests? You know what I mean? Like yes, you don't have to talk about, you don't have to have scope comments. This is inside or outside of scope, or they wonder, is this hourly and how much is this going to end up costing? But people, when they hear about this model, they always assume that it's kind of like a buffet and people are sidling up to the shrimp and just jamming their pockets full and kind of abusing your time. What can you tell people about that? Is it true? Is it a myth? Is it something you have to wrestle with somewhere in between?
I found that 95% of people are extremely respectful of the amount of time and effort it takes to do good work. And as long as you're giving routine updates and showing things like, my goal is every 48 hours, here is an update on the thing that we're working on. Most things are done within 2 to 3 days, but some things take a little bit longer, especially if I'm doing an entire homepage redesign that has 10 different custom graphics on it that need to be created, and I'm revamping a lot of their design foundations like typography, color, etc. uh,
Mm,
they're cool with it because they can see the before and after of, wow, we were here at point A and Zach took us all the way to, we'll say to Y, not fully to Z, because there's always room for improvement at the end.
mm,
uh, so I found that most people are very, very respectful, but then you get the occasional people that, want to say like, can we just do like the copywriting and the design at the same time? And it's like, no, we can't, because Zach has to base the things that he designs off of the words that Corey makes. And we found that this is the best workflow for us to make things fast and to keep the iterations to a minimum.
So, speaking of communications, like what are your systems around communicating back and forth with the clients? Is it all asynchronous? Do you have meetings with people? If you do have meetings, what are they reserved for?
So this was the thing that we changed. I think we changed it in early spring of this year, or no, we changed it before the end of last year. Our middle tier used to include a call every 2 weeks with us, but we were finding that they ended up just becoming a standing meeting that we're wasting a lot of people's time because
Yeah.
it didn't make sense for us to keep doing it. The only thing that you got to ask us like spur of the moment questions, and there was a lot of chit chat about like, how are you, how are things going with your business, but all things that could be done instead over our client communication tool in our dashboard in Notion, and with like a quick Loom video instead. So we put a hard line in the sand that said we only do meetings for four things. We do it for our internal sales calls, so that's half an hour where people jump in to get to know us and ask us questions before they start working with us. The brand strategy workshops that I head up, the positioning workshops that Corey runs, and then customer research, where we are interviewing customers on behalf of our clients to ask them questions about their work with our client. So those are the four areas where we do it.
And are those included in the monthly price, or are those separate things?
So we call them synchronous workshops. So, and those synchronous workshops are only on the middle tier and uh, the third floor. You
Got
can,
it.
so it is possible 100% to do our brand strategy workshops and the positioning workshops asynchronously. It just goes a lot faster and it's easier if we get to jump into that call. But candidly, this is also something that we're thinking is like, well, we were actually just talking about this really recently, where we think that it's actually going to be more beneficial to open those up regardless, because our pricing now is more based on how many people you get to work with at one time, not so much on whether you get those calls or not.
Mm.
Because we're finding that wasn't something that customers really valued more than being able to get more work done. And plus, it's at max like an hour long call between either one of us, and we only have to do it once, maybe like for the branding. Hopefully, you only have to do it once for every like 10 years or so. The positioning you'd have to do maybe once every year or so to at least try and go really deep on it. But you can always touch base and send Loom videos, make comments, change it, alter it, because your positioning changes, especially when you're a growth stage SaaS company where you're going to have to make alterations to it.
Right. Yeah. Refinements and stuff. So when you are selling anything on a subscription model, all of a sudden churn becomes a word in your lexicon. So what happens with these clients in terms of, customer lifetime value? How long do they stay with you? How much do they move up and down in the tiers? And is that a manual process? Is that a phone call, or can they just click a button? Just curious about those things.
So everything is self-serve. Like we technically don't have to do anything. Um, and we can, we will jump in if they ask things like, hey, can we pause the subscription? Can we do, or can we move up in a tier? And we're happy to do it for them, but we don't have to. I think
Hmm.
that some people they don't fully understand that they can actually be in control of that element themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so it is possible for them to do, but we're happy to do it if they want to uh, move up in tiers or move down or pause. We can do all of it from Stripe.
Hmm.
Uh, as far as how long people stick with us, we have, let's see, so we have two people that have been with us since day one, like on launch. Our first client, that one that I told you, who
Yep.
really wanted to work with us, he is still with us, and he's been there since day one. We had another one that we picked up about 2 weeks later that is also still with us, and we've also had people come back. So we've had a client that was with us from, I think, June, no, not like August of last year. They took a break for the holidays until about May, and then reached back out to us again, and then they became a client again last month. So people
Mm.
come back, and I think that's the cool part, is that they can actually um, move off, jump back on, and then if they need to, like if it just doesn't necessitate having us on retainer, then they don't have to use us, and that's the beauty of the model. So yeah, you do have to get used to churn, but it's also comes with the territory of it's just easy to sign up. You have to make it that easy to pause, and I think Ron Baker even mentions that in his book Time's Up, where if you put up annoying barriers to prevent people from pausing when they don't need you,
Yeah.
then that's a bad practice, and you're going to probably lose clients at a minimum lose a referral if you do something like that.
Yeah. I recently talked to Matt Kurbis, who's a subscription law firm, and he said that some people do kind of like toggle that pause button on and off quite a bit, but he's like, I don't care. He's like, if they want to spend their time doing that, then that's fine. But he said most people don't do that.
No, I think that most people will stick around for a while. I think the shortest amount we've seen people come around is 3 months. I'd say that's at the low end, but then
Hmm.
high end is 12 plus months sticking with you. So I don't know what our average is. That actually be something interesting to look at and see total what's our average lifetime value for people. We would only know it definitively as far as months go, but even with months, you get a really good understanding of how long they've been with you and what you could expect to get from one client on average.
Who's your ideal buyer? Like, what's the I mean, I know industry wise, but like, what's the situation they're in when they come to you?
So we've been finding like our favorite people to work with are they circle around that microconf space. Like the Tiny Seed is the company that does small amounts of funding for founders in similar situations. The Calm Fund would be a similar vein, or indie VC would be another area of that, or bootstrappers. So people that have moved a company from zero to like well over $500,000 in ARR, maybe as one person
Hmm.
with little help from the outside. Definitely not someone who they could keep on retainer and help to or get to help them build out marketing assets for their company.
And did you say it's like a solo bootstrapper, or like it's someone who hasn't really hired?
We do have quite a few solo bootstrappers that work with us,
Mhm.
or I'd say solo up until I think that the people that I'd include in that category, actually, we've only had a couple clients that had massive teams,
Mhm.
like excess of 20 people. I think most of them hover between 1 and 10 full-time employees, and I think 10 in many of those cases would be a stretch. It's usually one, like under 8,
Hmm.
the amount of people they have working with them, but they're just killing it. Like they have a really niche product that they found an audience with that resonates with it, and it's something super useful, but they haven't been able to communicate the usefulness of it or put in tactics to help them fix the leaky bucket that is their website or their other product marketing efforts.
So where's their head at? It's like they're like, oh, we've got a tiger by the tail, but we're leaving money on the table because of our janky website or something.
Sometimes, yeah. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of times, especially if they're working with me, they have this kind of like a time to grow up moment,
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
they like, we know we haven't paid a lot of attention to the way that things are designed, and design is becoming more and more prevalent on how people perceive the value of your company, and
Mm.
being able to court those customers that we want. I'm pretty sure if specifically they're working with me, that's the big thing. I wouldn't say it's vanity, but it's more of they are now to the point where they feel like they're lacking confidence in the way that they look, and then
Mm.
that cascades into other areas as well. Like, oh, there's a lot of small things we could be doing that we know we should have. Like, our onboarding email sequence is terrible. Our retention email sequence is terrible. Our copywriting on our website is terrible. And we could do all these things a little bit better, and that would help move that needle. It's almost like they started going to the gym, and they were able to exercise a lot and have a lot of improvement really, really fast, go from like a 0 to 60. But now
Hmm.
they're trying to work incrementally from 60% up to as high as they can go.
Hmm. Yeah. So they figured out one magic trick and they know that they are really lacking in a bunch of other areas. So they're like, oh, we're plateauing a little bit. It seems like we've got all of the juice out of this lemon. So, or as much as we can. And there's a lot more that there are a lot more lemons.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about capacity? So imagine someone's thinking about this. They've got some skill. They're really good at it. Maybe they're a designer, developer, copywriter, some kind of marketer, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
SEO. And it feels like a stupid question to ask because I know the answer, but why not just get a job? That's kind of like a subscription design arrangement. Other than the equity and doing your own thing and not having a boss breathing down your neck, like what is the difference day to day in your mind between just having a single employer and doing something like a subscription, especially as a soloist?
That's a really good question. So we're at the point now where I'm playing more of the leverage game. And like, I have smaller junior designers that can help with, or I have a junior designer that can help with the implementation of things that I've already laid the groundwork for. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't get caught doing a bunch of like smaller, impactful, but not difficult for me to do, just tedious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can then focus on other things, as can my other co-founders. But if I was a soloist, the the difference I think would be that you'd probably get a lot more reps with other companies, and you might find that the company that you're working for maybe isn't doing things as good as they could, or you'll start to see a lot more pattern and find ways to expedite your own workflows. Because I know that this is something that I've had to get really good at, which is efficiency, and especially in design. Like, it's creative work, but being able to deliver it really fast is an important item. I think that what you'll gain working for yourself with more load than you would have expected, I think that you'll find that your upper limits get pushed and that you become a far better craftsperson, one that could probably develop systems around this and then build out a team a lot more effectively. And it
Mm-hmm.
makes it easier to do something like that because you are aware of what your expected monthly revenue is going to be, and you can hedge
Mm-hmm.
that against, well, I can afford to bring on somebody for part time for less than half of what one of my subscriptions costs, and then automatically gain back half of my workday, or half my time.
Yeah. So if I was going to summarize that for the dear listener, you've got more options for creating leverage, or at least that are acceptable. You obviously you've got equity. I mean, it's a business that you could theoretically sell. And also, there's sort of a security in the diversification across having multiple clients instead of just one employer. And as you pointed out, you get more reps in different places, so you're probably going to get better at what you do on top of it. So lots of differences.
Definitely.
Speaking of leverage, I am curious if you are using AI in your workflows at all. And no is a perfectly good answer, but I'm just curious if you've explored anything like that.
Believe me, the day that AI is good enough to replace me and do things that I can do, I will happily take it. The problem is that I, I'm trying, and the it's not good enough. Like it's not there to meet the standards of the brand identity work that I need to do. It's not good enough to meet the standards of the copywriting that we need to do. It's not good enough to meet the standards of the even like the website layouts and stuff that we need to do. There are very few exceptions where some things will work. For example, if I need like an abstract graphic to just represent like a blog post or something, it could do those,
Mhm.
and I will use it in instances like that. But the AI models aren't good at taking something like a user interface and then abstracting it and pulling things away from it, like excessive amounts of text, like in subheadings to
Mhm.
that would just be distracting if you were looking at it, if like making it no different than a screenshot. So it's already hard for the AI to create something that currently exists, but then to extract it which is a level further, it just can't do it, or at least
Mhm.
not yet. So I've been working with it and trying to see what it can do. We use a tool called Reloom, which is a Webflow website component library, and they have a AI sitemap builder. But even then, though, we find ourselves going going and replacing the components that it suggests because it's not following the workflows that and layout patterns that we know work best for conversion rate optimization.
Mhm.
So I I try and make the most of it because I'm all for, if a robot can help me do things, then please robot come help me. It just has to be able to do them well and to the point where I'm not going to spend more time correcting the mistakes that it's made than if I had just done it myself.
Yeah. And is there anything behind the scenes though, or administrative grunt work, that kind of stuff, where it's not client facing and it's not the kind of thing where it's your expertise on display where you
Hmm.
found it useful? Like for me, I write a lot. I never have it write my stuff, but I use Grammarly on absolutely everything.
Yeah. So we'll do, like, I mean, I'm not the copywriter. Corey is, and I know that he will use ChatGPT to do more, to use for some deliverables, but then also for things like Grammarly and his spell checking and things like that, which are really helpful. But apart from that, we have a VA that we hired from Mexico who goes through our Notion dashboard and does things like, hey, here are the tasks that were completed this week. Go ahead and like, hey, XYZ team, here's what was in
Mhm.
progress, here's what got completed. And the reason we do that is because Notion's AI won't keep up with it, or it doesn't have the necessary integrations and plugins to communicate that via email.
Mhm.
Uh, so we've looked for AI solutions, but the specific needs that we were actually trying to fulfill don't exist yet, at least not with the tools that we're using that we found that are currently embedded into our workflow.
So, what other outsourcing have you done or are thinking about doing in the near term? Like you mentioned, sort of, I don't know, is junior designer the right term, but like, or a VA. Are there any other things that where you're like, geez, it just totally makes sense to outsource our payroll and accounting and legal but some things closer to the client, like account management or something like that.
The only things that we outsource primarily are um, miniature versions of ourselves. So Corey, Nick, and myself all have a second set of helping hands
Mm-hmm.
that are not they're they're good work, and they're fantastic workers, but they're not quite playing from the strategic levels. Like I still have to give guidance on like this is what this graphic should communicate,
Right.
and not just look nice, but this is what it actually needs to say, and how it needs to help support the copy that is to the left or right of it.
Hmm.
Corey has a copywriter who helps him with fulfillment of tasks, and we have a VA that helps us do things like when Corey goes to these conferences, she's helping him do things like book travel
Yeah.
and accommodations. So
Right.
using leverage in that capacity, I think, man, if we couldn't do that, we'd be up in our necks. Like, it's the administrative stuff that's really the most time consuming and annoying, because it's the stuff that you hate to do. Like, it's a
Right.
freaking slog having to look for a hotel that's next to this conference. And especially when it's like, this is the most like low impact, low value work that I could be doing, but for a client, but
Hmm.
it's super impactful for us. So that's why we made it more high impact by taking somebody who has where the main value that they bring is the ability to do that and take that off of our plate at a rate that we know is far and away better than what we would like if we were to have to do it ourselves. It'd be like the equivalent of $300, because it would take 2 hours for us to get all that stuff ready, and at like
Hmm.
$150 an hour, it's just not worth it.
Right. Right. All right. Well, I'm curious about when someone comes to you and they say, "Oh, one request, can you just redo our homepage?" And is there a t-shirt size, small, medium, large kind of mechanism involved, or do you go back and forth with them and say, "Well, this is actually 40 requests," and so you can kind of help them prioritize what they want you to work on next based on how much time it's going to eat up out of their month.
Normally, I use a four-letter word in the sentence, but I will, I'll refrain. It's still going to be a four-letter word, just one that's acceptable for children's ears if you have kids.
Hmm.
It's don't be a jerk about it. If you have a request and you know that it can be fulfilled in one, and if you're just going to be nitpicking like the things that go into it, like I could, in theory, break it out like section by section by section of a website, but that's going to be really annoying. So what I will do is I'll communicate to the client, specifically if they're coming for an overhaul, and
Hmm.
this might not have been discussed, but if there might be some things that are sacred within their brand. So I'll just get a bunch of clarifying information up front, like, hey, what's sacred? Like, am I allowed to change your color palette? Am I allowed to change your typography? Am I allowed to change? Uh, is there anything I'm not allowed to change within your current design makeup? And sometimes they'll say things like, yeah, like we love our colors, please don't change those, but we're not happy with how like voluminous they're used within our website. Like, it just looks like a
Sure.
clown threw up on it or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, um, and then I have a goal of like, okay, minimize the color palette, great. Some other things might be, hey, do you want me to just rearrange it from a design perspective? Because there's also some other sections in here that we think you should add that would be more beneficial for your conversion rate optimization. And if that's the case, maybe we should have Corey take a look at the copywriting and maybe do a variation of the web page copy before I come in and start designing things. Because then we're going to have to go back. Like, if I design it, then Corey rewrites it, I'm going to have to go back and redesign
Yeah.
pieces of it.
Right.
So I do, based on experience, I will let them know this is the expected workflow. How much creative liberty do I have with this particular task? And also, I suggest doing these things if this is something on your mind where you really want this to be, if we need to bring in another member of the team before me, and I think that would be beneficial, I let them know. And then that's it. They'll let me know, no, we're good. We don't need that. Or, yeah, that would be super helpful. Please do so. And more often than not, the latter happens.
Right. Okay. So with a name like Conversion Factory, the it's the probably everyone's goal is for them to get more conversions, right? Like, so do you ever find yourself them asking for a particular thing and you believing, or someone there believing that, like, wow, that's gonna be really bad for their conversions, and pushing back is basically what I'm getting at. Like, do you push back on the clients who request things that you think are going to negatively impact your overall goal?
Absolutely, with the caveat that it's still like their company at the end of the day,
Hmm.
and all you can do is say, we've seen this before, and we think that this option that we presented first is better. We will move forward with your suggestion if you really, really want to.
Hmm. Right.
And it never hurts to just speak your mind on those things, because some clients will listen. Like um, I did a facelift on a homepage last year for an events company client. They do events for, um, it's a software that helps do event management for medical company events, academic events, and then business events. So think everything but Coachella. That that's what they help create event apps
Okay.
for. Um, they even say that on their website. Like, we don't do dance festivals, although our team loves them. So anyway, I I redid their entire homepage, and uh, then they pushed back on some of the design and wanted to do some other stuff. And I said, no, I think that this is why it should be this way, because the constraints were we still wanted to use your colors, but we can only use blue so much before the entire thing looks like a Smurf. So we got to make sure that we balance this out properly, and we want to draw attention to very key things, like you have some very strong accolades up at the very top portion of your website that we want to draw attention to. We want to use photography because that was something that was lacking from the last version of your site. It wasn't conveying the humanity of your product. So explaining my rationale over a Loom video, and they came back and said, Zach, after watching your Loom video, we decided that what you put forth is actually a better direction than we had at the beginning. So it
Mm,
never hurts to give that pushback, especially because it's in the genuine interest of the client. You know, like
right.
that's the kind thing to do is tell them the truth.
Hmm. What about photography? Does that come up much? You guys don't do that. Like, how could you even do that?
Well, I mean, like, I'm not going to fly somewhere and,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
take
Right. It's
take
like,
and take pictures of them. But for in that case, it was things like just finding really good stock photography that I could manipulate the colors to, that felt like it didn't deviate from the visual makeup of their brand.
oh, cool.
So I'll go scout things for clients, and well, that's actually one of the areas where the AI is getting decent. Like, I could use something like FreePic has a an AI photo generator that I've used on client projects, or Visual Electric is another really good tool that I'll use for that. Like, photography is, I think, one of the few areas where that AI can be used. I'm more doing UI abstractions for the most part. Like,
Right.
photography comes up a little bit less than the stuff that I primarily do.
Yeah. For your market, it makes sense that that would be true.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So what would you say to somebody who is currently billing by the hour or doing these sort of one-off client engagements where, maybe they're giving fixed prices, maybe they're value prices, but they don't feel super good about the sales process. They don't really want to get better at it. They don't like doing sales. Um, I know a lot of people consider this kind of subscription model as it's a productized service, but it's a specific kind, these all you can eat subscription models where I know it's very attractive to people, perhaps for the reasons you said earlier about like, oh, no one will use the gym membership. But what would you what would you tell them? What would you tell your younger self, your year and a half ago self about this idea?
I'd say you were right, just like younger Zach, and you should have done it in 2018 when your mentor told you to. Um,
There you go.
it's a good model. Like, I I've done value based fees before. I've done fixed based. I've done hourly billing, and the subscription based fees and value based fees and fixed priced productized engagements, I think they all sit on an equal tier, and that there is very good reason to use each one of those. But if you are somebody who doesn't want to get really, really good at having those value conversations, or you're finding that's difficult for you to do, like, it's difficult for somebody in my position to try and track the metrics of branding. Like, that's a really hard thing to quantify and to put numbers against. It's really
Hmm.
more of like well, do you value it or do you not? You're clearly, by coming to speak to me, there's some kind of value here. And if you want me to track metrics on that, I can, but know that they're going to be something that's extremely downstream from the efforts that I'm going to put in.
Right.
Um, so what I've liked about the subscription model is that ease of pivot. Like, cool, we're going to work on this. I can help you build out a backlog of all the other things that we want to tackle and get done. And if when we're done with one thing, we just move on to the next. And
Yeah.
it's going to be this never ending cycle of work that is going to help propel that company further. And having the having the consistent income is something that I think is overlooked as well. Like, because I'm
Mm.
still, the thing is, I just don't like being told what to do, like at work um, by higher ups, because I felt like I'm capable of doing the same things, and it was in my nature to just not be told what to do. Like, and sometimes I think that you have to maybe parry the non-monetary benefits that you get from working for yourself, which is like, I don't like having to clock in, I don't like having to track hours, I don't like having to commute, I don't like having to go to
Mm.
meetings that I don't want to go to. And I have the ability to dictate what, like, the things around my time, I think, are a lot more things that I'm a lot more concerned about. The money's going to come in. You know, if you want to do fixed base fees and productized offers and you price it right and you know there's a market for it, you're probably going to make a good amount of money as well. I think that it was an experiment that ended up playing up very well, and now I'm trying to grow it and see how far I can go, because it is a big, like, I feel like your end goal changes when you have a subscription model, and it should be growth, which is
Mm.
how can I expand this further to make the machine bigger and more effective and more profitable.
That might be a good place to wrap up on. So, like, what do you see as the next steps? I mean, obviously, you just started to lay it out, but could you go into a little bit more detail there?
Yeah, well, I think that the um, for us, it's going to be growing the machine and the engine that is Conversion Factory. You know, like, having multiple versions or multiple teams of, you know, me, Corey, and Nick. How can we duplicate that
Right.
and be able to take on more clients? And how can we make sure that we're then getting into more effective client management and marketing and sales and all the other, like, working on the business elements that are necessary, because we developed the systems for creating really good work for our skill sets. Now it's a matter of how do we grow and scale that so that we're eventually not, like, we're jumping into the pure entrepreneurship realm, which, you know, Seth
Right.
Godin says, like, a freelancer, somebody who works with their hands. An entrepreneur is somebody who tells other people what to work on to grow a business.
Right.
And I think that that's the, unless you significantly bump your rates up, which is kind of hard to do, because one of the major selling points of a subscription model like this is that you are comparable, if not way more effective per dollar than like full-time in-house employee that
Right.
then
Exactly.
somebody has to manage.
Right.
So I mean, you could do that. It's one of the harder things to wrestle with. You know, that's, you and Rochelle had Paul Jarvis on many years
Hmm.
ago,
Hmm.
and one of his most profound quotes was, "Well, instead of taking on more clients, why don't you just increase your rate?" And you can do that to an extent. You should also keep in mind that if you're a soloist and you're charging 6K per client, you have 5 clients, and you're continually booked up, you're going to be making over $250,000 a year annually. Like,
Hmm.
that is an amazing living.
Hmm.
There are definitely people like Brett from Design Joy that make,
Right.
you know, $1.2 million. How he, being in his position and also being a designer, I don't know how it's physically possible,
Yeah.
but
My eyebrows are a little bit up in the air around those numbers, and but yeah. So it's the question of, like, do you want to continue to be a designer, or do you want to go full entrepreneur? I'm not asking you. I'm just saying to the listener, it sounds a little bit like you're at that point where you're like, oh, you know, do I want to be designing this machine? Like, that's pretty fun too. Like, that's a different, for a systems thinker, and having created a working model, it's like, well, like, why don't we dupe the model? How would we do that? It's a for for a certain person, that's a very fun set of challenges.
yeah. And one that I've found, like, there's always the nuance of risk, but, like, you've talked before about, like, you know, having the thought of having payroll over your head while you're trying to sleep at night is really annoying. But now I feel like there's different ways where you could do that with outsourced, uh, like managing of offshore dev teams, managing of offshore designers. There's a lot. Shepherd is a really, or I think now they're called Somewhere. Um, that's actually their name, Somewhere.
Of
Not.
what?
Are you
What
not
is it?
familiar with? Are you not familiar with Support Shepherd or
No.
Shepherd? So they are like one of the first offshore um, recruitment firms where you have like the need for a VA or you have the need for a sales team, and they will go scout people in the Philippines or Latin America that are capable of doing that. It's like, our VA
It's like a
is
recruiter for Upwork.
like a recruiter for Upwork, but their vetting standards are far higher. There's
Uh-huh.
another company, like we worked with a company called Remote Growth Partners. Shout out Jason,
Hmm.
who got me my designer who's in Brazil, and he's fantastic. Like his English is phenomenal. He shows up every Monday and Wednesday to speak with me about the projects that we have going on,
Hmm.
and they are okay and understand that this is a part-time gig that could also be full-time hours if it necessitates, and
Right.
they're far more flexible than like taking on um, a full-time employee that
Right.
is maybe like a fresh college grad or something like that.
Yeah, the expectations are completely different.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, great. Okay, well, we've been, geez, I'm looking at the clock. We've been chatting for a while. So I hope this was super helpful to anybody who has been, who's considering a move like this. I think it's very attractive. And I know from talking to a number of people that clients totally get it. Like this is not weird to them at all. And lots of clients just jump right at it. They prefer this much more than hourly. So where can people go if they wanted to sort of follow up with you or see what you're doing? Where's the best place?
I actually have an ask around that if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I'm looking to try and build out a bench of complementary skill sets that we don't do. For example, top of funnel marketing, like if you do social media ad management, or if you do email campaign management, if you build on WordPress or Framer or other frameworks apart from Webflow, which is what we specialize in, I would love to talk to you, especially if you're on a similar model, because
Hmm.
we want to have people that we can refer out to. Like, there's a company called Video Deck that does explainer videos for some of our clients, and I'm looking for those ancillary skill sets that are just as valuable. So,
Hmm.
or content writing would be another one as well. If you specialize in highly technical content writing, that'd be fantastic. And
Yep.
if you are interested, you can find Conversion Factory at conversionfactory.co. You can find me on Twitter. I am Zach Stevens, the brand thief, at ZSTVNS. And my email is Zach at conversionfactory.co. Just please don't take advantage of it, of
Yeah.
knowing it.
Zach with an H, right?
That's right, the common spelling.
Great. The correct spelling. All right, Zach. Well, thanks so much for reaching out and setting this up. I'm sure people are going to love it.
Awesome. Hope they do. Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, folks. That's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me next time on Ditching Hourly.